Dear home workout, it's not easy to say this, but you suck. Look, we tried everything to make this work. We tried running in place, biking in place, this thing in place. We broke out our old VHS tapes. We tried DIY treadmills, DIY leg presses. We tried dog squats, pig squats, baby squats. Seriously, we can do better than this. I want to wake up, jump out of bed every morning, and work out on the top of a mountain. And meet my coach in the most beautiful places on the planet.
Let's jump right into it. That's it, hips back, chest up.
I want to do the whole damn workout in my pajamas. And I want to become a champion in a sport from the freaking future.
Dig your whole body into those stripes.
Home workout, what if you could be more like this?
Let's finish strong here. Nice work, athlete.
You know what, home workout? Maybe there's still hope for us.
At the beginning of Boombox's history, before being known as a drumming game, it first began as a rhythm shooter. Punching mechanics were then added alongside shooting. Directional punching and obstacles were then added with a score counter and a combo counter. A neon aesthetic was introduced, along with a moving track. Here you can see the first version of the game lobby, alongside an online leaderboard. The aesthetic of the game then changed towards a low-poly 90s look, which carried through towards the final version of the game. You can also see the first appearance of Koopa the Cat, Boombox's mascot. Now shown are systems for dynamic cat animations, as well as advanced petting physics. Cassettes were then introduced as the primary form of level selection. A new procedural environment system was developed to accommodate for levels of any song length. A more stylized gameplay HUD, as well as a day-and-night cycle, can also be seen. A new level selection UI was made to streamline the level selection process, though cassettes could still be manually loaded if desired. Punchable gameplay objects were then stylized as wooden targets, and shields were added for deflecting airborne projectiles. The first version of the results screen was designed, which would display after the player finishes a level. After a lot of feedback and review, it was decided that Boombox would become a drumming game, which would allow for more natural movements at a wider range of skill levels. As our game's community grew, some of the players had started creating their own custom levels, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. 14 environments were made for the game, letting players freely choose their own gameplay atmosphere. Our community loves to pet Pupa, even if she does sometimes have an angry look on her face. We overhauled the lobby to be more spacious and improved the UI for leaderboards, level selection, and environment selection. All levels shown in this list were created by our community using our provided level editing software, and community levels can easily be directly downloaded from within the game.
Hey everybody, my name is Arturo Perez. I'm the CEO of Klutch Interactive. We are the creators and publishers of Synth Riders.
Hey everyone, really happy to be here. I am Johnny Adut, Head of Products Marketing at Supernatural, looking after brand, social, and community. Very glad to be here today with everybody.
Hello everyone, I'm Katya. I am CEO of Cyberspline Games, the company who published and produced Boombox virtual reality rhythm game.
Hey everyone, my name is Luca. I'm the founder and producer here at Cyberspline, and we just released and developed Boombox, a rhythm game. And I'm really, really excited to be here to chat with you guys today.
I'm Brady Wright. I'm lead engineer at Kinemotic Studios.
And I'm Ashley Cooper. I'm an architect turned game developer and dancer and co-designer and choreographer of Audio Trip.
Outstanding. I don't know how we got to this point, but boy, is it amazing that we did. So you are all over the world. You're in Albania. Arturo, where are you right now?
My headquarters is still Los Angeles, but I am in Portugal. I've been in Portugal since August.
So we've got Portugal. I think we've got Vancouver for the Boombox team. Is that right?
Vancouver, Canada.
I heard from Johnny that the Supernatural team is meeting up in person for the first time in some cases. Is that right?
We have a little event that some teams are joining in on this afternoon, and it's the first time that a lot of team members are going to be meeting each other in person, or I get to see some coworkers that I haven't seen since before the pandemic started. So very, very exciting and beautiful day, honestly.
I also love all of these games. This is why they're with us. Boombox, actually, I want to start with you because you're a newcomer really in terms of like the IP that people are getting familiar with. And you're doing some really, really interesting things, especially in terms of like UGC and licensing. Today, we're going to talk about music licensing, the complexities of that. How do you get the big songs? How do you get the big DLC packs? How do you license, Kanye West? What do you do with it? Can you make custom maps? Do you have multiplayer? How do you handle moderation? How do you make people not sick? So lots to cover. One last thing I'll say to the group is, how do you get out from under the shadow of Beat Saber? And how do you differentiate yourself and get your own market share and grab onto that audience and build those fans, right? So these are all things I want you to touch upon. But Boombox, let's talk about you. Why do we need another rhythm game?
Absolutely, I'll probably give it a go. So you mentioned the differentiation between the other games and the other current games that are currently in the market right now. And we could, considering that Boombox was originally designed from scratch, so all the systems are custom, all the environments and so forth, there are really a lot of elements that we can pinpoint as a differentiation. But if I have to mention some of the main points here of differentiation with the other games that are currently there, we can talk about obviously the range of motion. In Boombox, what we decided to do is to have an approach with a radial placement for the notes. What this did, it really allowed the users to fully express themselves and have their own style. In fact, we observed that a lot of our users were coming up in perfectioning their style and coming up with their own way of playing the game, which is something extremely exciting. Now, if you pair that as well with all the variables that we have been considering in attributing the score, for example, the timing, this is another big element of distinction, or that basically, what was helping us out to create this new IP. And when it comes to timing, we realize as a team the important element of that being as a component for the base of any rhythm game in general. Then obviously we had more variables to add on top of that, which are direction, speed, and aim. But there is so many more other elements that, in conjunction with original design, as well as all the systems we created and handcrafted environment and the art style, really make up for a unique experience when playing Boombox. One thing I would like to also to mention, and that's our general view as a team, we don't really see other games as competitors in industry at all. For us, when we see a new rhythm title coming out on the market, it's exciting because we're gamers first. The entire team is made of gamers. So for us, it's another opportunity to play more content. But at the same time, from a strategic standpoint, seeing other rhythm games coming onto the market and having success or being played by users, it's for us a validation that we invested and we put so much effort into the right genre. So that's really, really something exciting for us. So keep it coming. More games, the better.
And I also wanted to add actually another point is we actually have more than 300 pre-cleared DMCA free songs that we decided to provide to our community for the mapping of their own music. And so all the maps, when they're mapped, then you can download them directly from the game, which allows anyone actually being able to access any of those custom created maps. So you can only imagine every time I log in actually in Boombox, there are already 5-10 new maps there available. I think that's an amazing point also here.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big point for Boombox, is that you have this like DMCA free licensing of the songs. What does that actually mean?
Well, what DMCA claim mean is that they can, if the streamer plays your game and streams it on their Twitch or YouTube, they can get the claim or actually can get completely banned. And this is why multiple people stopped streaming certain games, is because it just damages their reputation as streamers. And for the rhythm games, something that we learned, it's all about streamers in terms of like promoting the game and doing the influential marketing for use also, and get engaged and bring more awesome community into the team. So having DMCA free music is really important, and on top of that, it allows tournaments and competitions.
Exactly.
So which we are planning plenty of them in the next month, and going on with those, because people love competing with each other on rhythm games. So tournaments and competitions are crucial for us. And how do you do it? With DMCA free songs.
Wow, that's a pretty revolutionary step. Beat Saber definitely got its wings from watching people play it and looking at them and saying, holy cow, I did not even know that was physically possible to do. So that's an interesting hurdle. I don't know if any of the other people present have solved this problem or have this concern, but does anybody else want to chime in on this question of how do you deal with streaming, DMCA copyright, and so on?
We definitely are feeling that concern, and we get a lot of questions around, is your game free, safe to stream? So we work with 99 Lives, for example, and they're sort of DMCA free. They're phenomenal, and we're working on putting more songs from them for that reason. But it is tough because it's a balance between putting well-known songs and songs that are great for the game and for other reasons, and then also being DMCA free. So our response has been to sort of balance that out as much as possible.
Right.
And
I
give a
bought
little bit
into
of
your
both
game
options.
because of you had a DLC with Offspring and Rancid and all these punk bands, and I was like, oh yeah, that's fun. That would be an interesting thing to dance to. Would I do the same thing if it was like a local indie punk band? Probably not so much. So there's definitely a balance and a challenge there. I mean, Supernatural, dancing to Cardi B is freaking awesome. Doing a workout that way, or to like polka, you guys got me on that one. So this is part of the big point of the conversation today, is like, how do you create a balance between UGC stuff that's streamable, but still has like all the cachet of a mega act? Tricky business, really. Probably most of the business comes from this concern, right?
It definitely is tricky. I think one of the things that's most important to us is we're constantly thinking about how do we help people continue on a fitness journey and keep coming back and establish habit and routine when they're using our service. And music is one of the core pillars of that, being able to provide music that people know and love, being able to provide tons of music so that people can find the right taste for them. Particularly, I might want to be rocking out to really intense rock or EDM on a mountaintop. Other people might want to groove on a beach to some reggae, which I will do on my chill days on a Sunday, for example. And so the product experience itself of getting in there and having all this variety really does help you find the right rhythm, find the right groove for you so that you can keep coming back and build a routine. The difficulty, as you mentioned, is on the marketing front, being able to enable great UGC, being able to have people stream on social so that other people can get a taste of what the experience looks like, especially when we start talking to folks who aren't really familiar with virtual reality. Just like you said, getting to see what it's like to be inside of the experience, moving your body, hitting targets is one of the quickest ways to start giving people a taste of what it might feel like to be inside of there. And not being able to use the music in totality is tough. And it's something that we're looking at really closely on how to navigate, because it does really help sell the experience to those who aren't familiar with headsets and what it might be like to put one on and work out inside of it.
You guys clearly have a relationship with Universal Music, which is an enormous catalog. Do you want to talk about that deal, that relationship?
Yeah, sure. We work very closely with Universal Music and Warner Music Group. And our approach has been to make deals for catalogs of music so that we do have quite a large stockpile of music that we can curate our workouts to and choreograph our workouts to. The music industry and navigating those rights is very complex and very difficult. And those deals take a really long time to put together, because in addition to working with the labels, you also have publishing rights to deal with as well. Very recently, we struck a deal with UMPG, which is the publishing arm of Universal Music Group, which unlocked tens of thousands of songs additional that we will be able to use in the future as we continue to program. So for us, kind of going back to what I was mentioning before, rather than taking this bespoke approach of going after one artist at a time or one album at a time, because we're not necessarily providing DLCs that roll out on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis, we need to be programming new workouts on a daily basis. So being able to have a bank of music that we can pull from helps us meet that goal.
How do you deal with streamers? What are you doing about, how are you creating viral engagement of your content?
It's something that we're really looking closely at right now. Lots of members like to create split screen content where they're on one side of the screen and they've recorded what they've done in the workout on the right side, which I think is quite helpful for people to showcase both the physical movement that takes place in a Supernatural workout and what they're seeing in headset. Streaming directly from headset itself is great for our Facebook community, for example, where members are already familiar with what the Supernatural product experience is. But for people outside of it, if you're just streaming directly what's inside of the headset, you're not necessarily selling that fitness proof point of what it's like to move and groove and dance inside of a Supernatural workout. So one of the things that we're looking at closely is how can we enable more people to create that kind of content more easily? It does require having some familiarity with editing software, knowing how to screen record in your headset, pull it all onto your computer, edit and sync everything up together, which you're going to have a much smaller proportion of your audience base that knows how to do that. And we're thinking about, all right, how can we put some tools out there for our members to make that easier? So for the people who are new to VR and aren't as technical, they're going to want to show their friends and family all of the great moves that they're doing in Supernatural and what's going on in the headset as well. So we want to make that easier for folks to share.
There's that whole new feature that's coming out right now with Quest, where you can actually use your iPhone on your desk to turn yourself into a chroma key whole thing, which is awesome. I mean, it's crazy that you can do that. So your iPhone sort of becomes a camera, and then it's like synced up to your Quest, and it knows how to overlay you. Something to take advantage of. So I want to throw this over to Audiotrip, because I know that your work is highly choreographed and very, very specific. It's like hyper designed. Do you guys want to talk about your process with music and the relationship there?
Sure, yeah, because from the very beginning, we just wanted to create something that we didn't see yet, because at the time there wasn't really anyone here. I think there was Audio Shield was something that he put me in at the very beginning. And we wanted to create something that was what I had come from choreography and dance background my whole life. And so we, from the very beginning, wanted music that really moved us. And we, like Arturo said, kind of had to find a balance between popular music that would be really familiar and be a stepping stone for most of the people in the world to get into and try something that was already very novel to them versus something that maybe they'd never heard of, but could be really stream friendly, which we have obviously discovered is the best way to really share our content with the whole world who doesn't yet have a headset or the arcade.
I guess our approach is in some ways the polar opposite of what Johnny just described as Supernatural, where it was hyper curated and very rather than kind of like being, because we would love to have this huge library, that we could pump stuff out like daily. That'd be really amazing. But we're also doing environments that are synchronized to the music, so it's both the choreography that you actually have and interact with as a player, but also the visuals and all that kind of stuff. So we've kind of gone with this like highly curated, very everything very handcrafted sort of approach, and that of course that's a lot more demanding as far as labor, is much more labor intensive for us to produce. And when
we say us, it's the two of us.
It's just the two of us. So,
that blew me away. It's just you two making this like epic game.
It is. It's definitely our passion project.
Yeah.
Coming from architecture and dance, it's just we want every single thing in the game to be so completely curated to just encourage the story that we feel in the music. It's all about that one song and like how you experience the environment of what it means and how you experience the moves of how I feel. And because I choreograph every single song in the game so far, so
so it's very intimate for us and very, very personal, very emotional. There's a lot of expression in that. So and we think that comes through in the gameplay. So it's amazing. It's really interesting to see like the different approaches that everybody's taking and how we all get a cool product at the end of it in different ways.
Yeah, one of the things I like about Audio Trip is that you guys were early in this process. You were out there in the early days of the VR rhythm games, and I remember Soundboxing and Audio Shield were around at the beginning before Beat Saber. There was like Light Saber Trainer, and there was Soundboxing. And Soundboxing was a phenomenon at the time. People were like, "Oh my God, this is the future of VR." But, not many people think about Soundboxing now. Those two things fused together and became what I think is Beat Saber. But you were there back then. So tell me what that journey has been like for you, being around for so long, and how do you maintain and grow your audience with all these new IPs coming into the picture?
Yeah, when we first started working on it, Audio Shield was the only similar thing that we were aware of. And of course, that's completely procedural, and that's kind of why we decided we wanted to go this entirely handcrafted route, which is much more difficult to do in terms of if you want volume. But that Beat Saber, of course, was the first one. The kind of like, obviously Beat Saber it raised a lot of eyebrows and it went really viral, and the mixed reality videos, some of the live videos that came out. It got really, really broad penetration because like even her father, who he doesn't even do social media that much.
I didn't even know he was on Facebook, and he sent me a message saying like, "Have you seen this?" Yeah,
it was a video. It was a live video of Beat Saber before Beat Saber had come out. So it really managed to build that hype, and it's a testament to what we were talking about earlier about how effective it is for people to be able to see someone physically embodied, playing the game.
Yeah.
So it was honestly, it was kind of demoralizing because at the time we felt like, oh, we've got something and we're the only ones doing this. We're the only ones, working on this, and we're going to have this advantage.
And we had just quit our great careers as architect and software engineer. We're like, let's go all in. We got a great idea, and then
so there was that. But I think to answer the question, you just kind of recenter yourself and recommit to what it was that brought you to work on that project in the first place and why you were passionate about it in the first place.
And it's just really something that we wanted to exist in the world. So we just kept pushing it until it exists. Like
something we just believe in.
We honestly play our game a whole lot when we want to feel better. We just jump in and we're like, we remember how great this is. It's good.
So I think it may sound kind of simple and maybe even a little cliche, but just remembering why you started doing what you were doing, and kind of refocusing on that core vision of what that was, and not getting distracted, and not trying to think, how do I beat this group, or how do I compete with them, or how do I distinguish from them. You just have to focus on what it was that made you care enough to do it in the first place.
And like Lucas said, everyone that brings people to VR helps everybody who's making VR. It's still so new. Exactly. It's like, if you discovered VR some way, great.
Absolutely, that's so true. When I try one game out, I say, what's the thing about that's going on? And it took me a long time to come to some of them. For some reason, Synth Riders was one of the last games I discovered, but I was amazed to realize that it was so different from everything else. And by the way, what you just said is totally beautiful, and I'm going to cry now, so I might need a moment because I mean it. It's just, I get the passion. I understand the value in believing. Stephen King said, when you try to write for everybody, nobody can relate. But when you write something intimately personal, it seems like everyone can relate. And you have to come from what your love and your strength is in order to be able to connect to people. And sometimes you don't know what it is that does it. I want to go to a different point here about watching somebody do the thing. When I'm in Supernatural, I am of two minds. One, I look like a flailing duck that's about to destroy everything in the room and nobody should be around me. I would embarrass myself. And then on the other hand, I think I'm this graceful swan doing perfect pirouettes and I look like a ninja on fire, right? I don't know which one it is. It's one of the two. So one thing I do miss from Supernatural is I don't know what you're supposed to actually look like when you do it. I know what somebody looks like when they do Pistol Whip. I don't know what somebody looks like when they do Audio Trip, except a couple of trailers, but it's interesting to me to see what the different modes and platforms can elicit. I know when I do Dance Central, I feel like I'm really doing some killer hip hop moves. And I think that my dancing has improved as the result. I mean it. I really do think that my dancing has improved. Let's talk about how you design these experiences where you're mostly punching or swiping at objects to turn you into a dancer. And how do you connect it to the style of music, whether it's electro swing or polka or punk? How do you make a bunch of punching squares into a choreographed feeling?
I think that's a great question. And I really love what you just pointed out about the difference between you might look really crazy, but you feel like this amazing ninja warrior when you're in there. And that is actually incredibly important to us. And I think one of the great values of getting to work out or dance or play a full body rhythm game in virtual reality is that you don't have mirrors where you can see yourself. You're not distracted by other people. You can completely lose yourself to the music and get into a flow state. One of my favorite things is my phone notifications aren't going off and buzzing in my pocket and distracting me. It's like one of the only parts of my day where I'm just wholeheartedly focused on what I'm doing. And it's like one of the most beautiful things about virtual reality to me. And I think why so many people are coming to the Quest platform and finding all of these amazing rhythm games and fitness experiences and actually like letting go and having an amazing time for the first time in their lives where they haven't been able to access that out in the real world. Because in our world today, we're surrounded by so many distractions from getting present with yourself. So that in and of itself, I think is just like such a hallmark of everything that we got to do and such a huge opportunity. To answer your second point about how do we go about choreographing to the music, similar to Ashley, we have a team of choreographers, all of whom have different dance backgrounds that actually choreograph the movements in Supernatural workouts. So they're working very closely with our coaching team and the fitness squad in order to make sure that all of the movements are healthy and we're getting some like good squats in there and activating all different parts of your body. But the real like magic comes from a dancer who knows how to get your body to explode when the crescendo of a song hits, or we'll have our Take the Stage workouts, which are choreographed to live music. And we're listening to the drum beat, we're listening to that guitar solo, and we're trying to translate what's happening with the instruments to what you do with your body, which I think just enables you to heighten that whole lose yourself, get into the flow state, connect with the music experience that makes for a VR experience that's about just having fun before it is about like building your muscle or something. You realize you're sweating after the fact, which is what's so awesome about it. But that's very much our approach. Is I really loved everything that the Audio Trip team was talking about. If you guys have these disciplines and these backgrounds of architecture and dance, and you're bringing all of that into this VR experience, we very much approach it in the same way, where we can create an entire experience for people from the ground up. We don't start with fitness and we don't start with gaming. We start with experience design, and that requires talent from all different disciplines to create a world together. So I just want to say that I think it's so cool that we all get to be in this space and think along those lines.
Great. This is actually a really important question for us, and it was kind of it's what set us off at the very beginning. And one of the very first things we did is I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to play this song, because it was actually the song that inspired the entire game. And it made me want to get up and move, and I wanted to figure out how to express it in VR. So I said, okay, I'm going to play the song. Now you dance to it, and I'm going to video. So I got my phone out, and I said, I'm going to video you, and you just do whatever, as a dancer and a professional choreographer, because she's been all of these things her whole life. I said, okay, dance, and I'm going to record you and see how you move. And then we're going to figure out that, since, the only thing we can track are head and hands in VR, we're going to figure out, how do we incentivize a player? How do we create gameplay elements using that tracking information to incentivize a player to do the same movements that you feel in your body that you want to do?
Yeah, we reverse engineered me dancing.
Yeah, and that's how we approached the design from the very beginning, before we had prototyped it at all. And that was our guide. It's like it was going to be a dance game, and it was all about exactly what you're talking about, like getting those specific moves, and it's specific to different dance styles and different genres. And throughout the whole evolution of the game, we've tweaked the gameplay elements specifically for that, so that we can incentivize specific types of movements. And it's worked really well. We have several different genres in the game at this point, and I think it really comes through. People really, like we have like funky stuff, and you get kind of like this John Travolta Grease thing going, and then
I do put actual dance moves in there, and it is such a delight to see someone stream that and they do the exact move that was in my head. That language of dance comes through, and that's what I was just talking to clinical psychologists about this morning, about the language of dance and the language of movement. And when you see people from all different cultures all around the world, moving and maybe laughing in delight or glee at the same point in the song, from wherever they are, and they're doing the same move. It's this language that moves from like up here and here, from what we put in the game, into their bodies. They know what we wanted them to know and feel. And that's what's really, really cool about these games, that it's allowing people to break out of what they thought was possible for their bodies and their minds, and maybe the quarantine that they're in, because they get to experience something that they didn't think possible before. It's a really cool thing that we're all doing.
Yeah, it's like puppeteering the framework of a person, or giving it these sort of beats. Before I started kicking Stephanie and Amber's ass on the leaderboards in Supernatural effortlessly, I actually had a very hard time in Supernatural. Basically, it was hard to get through an 8-minute segment, and I was like, oh man, this is kind of like a little too crazy. After 2 or 3 weeks of doing it, though, I built some sort of strength I didn't know about. It wasn't like necessarily muscle strength. It was core strength. It was like hand-eye body coordination, all sort of moving in concert. And I started doing 30, 40-minute workouts easily. In fact, I started craving them. And again, this is not about the fitness side of it, but it was just about like having a conversation with my own body and remembering like what my extension is, and like remembering how to like center my core. And it guides me in many different ways through all of those things. At first, you don't think anything's happening. You don't think you're really exerting yourself. Of course, then you're pouring sweat and you don't know where it came from. But there's this kind of profound level of engagement that comes from it. Not having a mirror is something, actually, like not worrying about the pose, but just being fully engaged in what's coming at you means that high pursuit of like dance like nobody's watching. Which of course they can when you're in VR. But yes, it's that idea of dancing with total abandon. So let me throw this to Boombox. So we haven't heard from you in a minute. Tell me about how you map music to the experience. Boombox has a connotation of its own. I thought it meant like a boombox, but actually it's interesting what the name comes from. And so let me give you some of those prompts and talk about how you map people with your music.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for asking. So for us, it's a lot relatable to what the guys mentioned, and specifically what Johnny said too, in getting the people in a state of flow. That for us was an imperative, let's say, direction to take for Boombox. We realized at first that the most important aspect of developing a game was just chase the fun. So we started from a very, very humble origin of determining, okay, what is fun to perform in VR with this technology? So we start prototyping and fast prototyping a lot of mechanics. We went from a completely different genre of game and slowly refined it. But for us, I will say what really, really made the difference was, number one, obviously the community aspect. We were open to feedback since day one. And that was something that really, really paid us off at the end. But let's say the sweet spot that we found in developing the game was being able to combine both the technical aspect and the expertise of, the musical knowledge and the technical aspect of developing certain system and so forth, in combination with the artistic side. So when I'm talking about the artistic side, there are so many elements, and it was really, really fascinating for us to see the fact that there are elements that you might think that would not be contributing to the overall experience or getting into the state of flow, but contrarily to that, all those elements were critical. And I can mention some of them, and they might be considered minor, but they're absolutely not. The colors, the distance of the player from whatever is outside of your range of view, the lighting that you utilize, the sound design that is put in place, the level of the sound as well, the UI and UX experience, all the interface that you have to be facing by playing with the game, whether or not you have an anchor point, the landscape, the line of sight, all these things are contributing to a full, clean experience that can guide and lead the users into the state of flow. The state of flow, the way that we reached to that point for Boombox specifically, and that's how we decided to map, was for us to give more of a free-for-all experience. So freedom of expression in reading the patterns and having fun generally with the music. So those are some of the elements, but really the process of mapping to it was supported from both sides, both from an artistic standpoint of view and also from a technical side of view too. In the specific, for example, another point to mention was that we really engaged with another external company, Atlas Rhythm, who are the expert in the mapping field, and they were the expert for us. We supplemented that by testing, by showing it to the community, by playing it among us, and relay back the feedback. So there was this amazing and, how can I say, it was very family-oriented feeling of the community telling you what felt good and what didn't. And there was never, the feeling of, oh, but this is mean, taking a few steps back. No, we were always super excited to hear someone to tell us, because of the song or because of this element that you guys included in the game, I can feel that I can express myself. So we were really down to all the details of what was needed and necessary for us to get the people to enjoy that freely.
I also wanted to add to this is we also decided from the start that our game should feel very fitnessy. So we really wanted to recreate this full body move. And how do you do it? So your gamers don't just, keep their hands in front of them while playing the game and do lots of resets. How do you encourage this full body, full arm movement at first, and then also full body movement? And I really wanted to say thank you to also Audio Trip. I personally played a lot of your game before that, and those walls that you have are amazing. Your back hurts so badly after that. So we were thinking, how do we do this also that our gamers, they do move a lot? And this is why we also designed our walls in like free fall all way that you can actually locate them pretty much in any way you want. You can even force people to jump or make push-ups almost at the bottom, and that's what they're actually doing. We are now also working on the 100 squats competition map, so this is another thing that we want to do. And for the location, that as you could see, we don't have just the square where we put our notes, but it's, as Lucas said, circle. So and the drumsticks are short, so you cannot really hit them like this. You have to go full move. And when obviously you guys can see that lots of Beat Saber players are joining us right now, and they were first concerned, like, how do you do all those resets? But we see how they learn the move. Instead of doing this, they are doing now this, which is so fun, so fitness active. And yeah, again, you're sweating a lot. And the fun part is that we didn't even discover all the potential of our editor. So we're actually creating new patterns, but there is so much more. And we have people now working on some vibros, some other things that they implement. So this is awesome to see how the game also with the community in just going forward and discovering so many new aspects of it.
That's a huge deal. The idea that you give the public the opportunity to break your engine and teach you things about it, right? Now, not everybody here necessarily has that implementation, but the ability for Minecraft, Rec Room, Roblox to pivot, Fortnite to pivot is massive, massive. Their users showed them what to do. So let's talk about this. I don't want to make anybody who doesn't have this implementation uncomfortable because we all learn from each other different ways. But Boombox has created a way for users to really jump in and start to teach you what to do, right? Do you want to comment on that? How you've made that easier? How you prevent them from making each other sick or breaking things?
I can maybe start, Luke, and you can proceed with that. So we obviously create our game with one really important aspect in our minds is that rhythm game is not fun without the community. And so we were thinking about what our future would look like, and we all agreed, as all gamers ourselves and many rhythm gamers, that the community is the core kind of aspect for us. This is why from day one, what we decided we're going to be, they know better than us. They know so much more than we do. So why don't we just, forget that we are developers and actually start asking them also questions and accept their feedback. I literally was just asking them, what is OST? What does OST mean? Or those even questions that I have not been gamer myself, but I decided to take care, to lead this community, drive, I would say. And so just being there and show them your weaknesses, and they teaching you a lot. And this is why we also create the editor, so they can teach us also what they would like to see in the game. We created multiple channels around Discord that community actually leaves their feedback. And you guys, at beta testing, that was... oh my God, how much feedback
very educational. Yeah.
And at some point it was just upsetting even, but it's just like they're telling you, okay, this doesn't work, this is cool, but everything is like the least. We created a trailer where we actually put all the feedback from the community. So our development team looks at it. I know we have 2 people assigned to collecting the feedback of the community. We have dedicated channels. We always encourage community to send us as much feedback as they can. And this is another reason why we now opening up our game as a platform also for the musicians to promote their game, their music, because we want to finally create this opportunity for musicians and game industry to work together. This is so amazing, you guys. They're looking for it. And look at Camellia, for example. He's one of the most known in rhythm games DJs. And he's like, yeah, let's work together. So we're actually collaborating. And he helped us to get 150 songs from him for our community. And community loves that. But at the same time, Camellia is not the only one. So we need to educate also a little bit community that there are other DJs. And this is why, just recently, within the 2-3 weeks, we've got 5 new DJs just joining, and we're supporting them and always looking for more, of course.
Yeah. And I guess it's really important here from an operational standpoint and more a strategic standpoint of hitting deadlines and getting forward in the process. We did follow the traditional pipeline in game development, which is pre-production, prototype, alpha, beta, candidate release. That's for sure. But having that in mind and being able to pivot, it was the key element. But how did we achieve that in practicality? Was to engage the community even in meetings, like we had meetings with a lot of people where people were just telling what they liked or what they didn't like, and we were just taking all that in consideration. Now, once again, the fast prototyping, it was the tool that allowed us to implement all the feedback. But in order to do so, we needed to have a very clear understanding of the road path ahead of us, or what needed to be completed by what time and by what level of completion. By doing that, what we understood was that we didn't want to have any sort of dependency that will dictate us to having to follow that path necessarily, but keep it as open as possible until we can. Obviously, we don't want to.
So basically, you're non-committal, is what you're trying to say.
Exactly. You need to be able to be agile. The agile approach was for us entirely embraced since day one. If you would have set in stone on a single mechanic that felt it was okay, it might have felt okay for some of us, but then when it hit the public, and this is all about them, right? It's all about the community that might not even enjoy, because maybe it's just a small percentage will be receptive to that. So being able to be agile was everything.
If you open up too much to the community, it can become a giant dumpster fire as well.
Exactly.
So you have to have quality control as well.
Yes.
This is true. I think it's just a funny story that happened to us. So we created the game and we had it a punching game with the mechanics. You could see it it wasn't the trailer, it was just more development journey video. So we had the punching game actually with the shielding, the bombs coming at you. So we had it at end of December, and our early release was aimed for end of February. So we, for the first time, showed this to our community, and we were so excited. And they're like, no, it's a bad game. No, we don't want to play it. And we're like, oh my God. So our new year was just us sitting there, and it was not pleasant. But so we started in January working with the community, asking, so what do you would like to see? And there were no drumming games at that time. So let's go for drumming. And they loved the drumming aspect of it. Yeah, so...
There's actually another game that I didn't manage to get to this panel, probably for good reason. We don't have enough space, but Ragnarok is another game out of France where you are a bunch of Vikings with big hammers and you're hitting drums to metal music and basically racing against other ships. And I was like, there are a million ways to do this. There are so many different modalities that you can use. And one thing about that is like, some of them are very narrow focus. Like, I find that every one of these games has a very fixed style, like Supernatural has got a look. It puts you into a gorgeous real world setting in a 360 sphere. Synth Riders has got more of like a cyberpunk laser neon look to it. Boombox has got this adorable cat that you can pet, and you go down these procedurally generated lanes with forests and like interesting objects. And then Audio Trip has got its own kind of like Tron-like sort of dance universe that you are living in, right? Would you be afraid to deviate from your style? Like, would you suddenly drop a DLC where, and I noticed this like with Supernatural, for example, lately you've been having some sort of fantasy settings and taking me out of real world locations. I want to throw to Arturo for a second, because I haven't heard from you in a bit, and I know that you're just like a master at this project that you've undertaken. So Arturo, talk to me about Synth Riders' style and how you might extend it or not extend it.
Yes, Synth Riders has a bit of two universes. So it started as a love poem to the 80s, really, with synthwave being played in our office every day for over a year. From 2017, 2018, that was all we heard. And cyberpunk and retrofuturistic look and all of that. And it's still, that's still so core to the game, and it's such a big part of it. But on the other end, we built sort of this very flexible engine as well, and built it to, we look at ourselves as sort of the Swiss knife army of rhythm games. And how do we allow, first our community to participate, whether it's avatars, stages, songs, choreographies, but also allow them to scale things up. And even us, we recently put out an adrenaline music pack with The Offspring, with Rancid, as you mentioned, and it's a very different song style to the music that influenced the game. And we're seeing that it has a lot of range that way, and we're not trying to limit it. So when the community comes in with their own custom stuff, it can be a very different look. I've seen custom stages where it's the Wild West and you're on a train, right? And so that's very different from where it started, and we're embracing that. So in one end, we're very true to its cyberpunk synthwave core, and that's the heart of Synth Riders. It's in the very name. But in another way, we are allowing it to expand with what we want it to expand to, but also what our community wants it to become.
And that's a main thing. It's like same with when you're in film and you're pitching something, you've got sort of these generic indie things where it's like, oh, it's about a guy and his life and his family and the meaning of the universe. And there's someone else who's like, it's about a dog and Christmas. That's one that's going to get the sale, right? Like high concept sells because people say, right now I'm in the mood for Synth Riders' particular brand of like electro, whatever. But for Supernatural, I just really need like some big open space. I need to be in a desert in Iran and to be doing a workout. Audio Trip, I want to have like a beautiful danced choreographed moment through this like really high speed universe that's like hyper designed. So there's two sides. There's like the hyper designed side of it. There's the nature of your IP that you identify with and you have to kind of stick with. These are all marketing considerations, like what happens if you get out of your lane, pardon the pun for a rhythm game, but what happens? Does anybody want to jump on that? Like, are you now like, oh crap, I'm Supernatural, now I have to look at like beautiful scenery for the rest of my life? Or do you kind of want to get away from that? Or would you just make a new game altogether?
I think for us, I still feel like we're all at the beginning of all of this. It's such early days in the VR space, and it's such early days for each of our experiences in games. For Supernatural, I think, like you said, the marketing consideration and the brand consideration for us is that we care deeply about connecting people with very human experiences. So that's where being face-to-face with a coach that's photoreal and being in these environments that are photoreal come into play. You mentioned the fantasy environments that we've had, and even with those, we've put effort into making it feel like you could actually be existing inside of those spaces, and it's not too gigantic of a deviation from the style of the real world places that you get to be in. Even our Mars location is built with footage from the rover and even like microphone sound recordings of Martian wind, which is so freaking cool. I wish we could get that information in there more easily.
Yeah.
But for us, I think definitely we are open to expanding and growing and evolving over time. It's probably not going to be a sudden shift into a completely new look and style, but it's only been a year that we've been out in market, and this new wave of VR has only been out in the world for 6 or 7 years at this point. So I think that there's more opportunity to change and evolve than there is being strict about staying in whatever lane that we're in. But for us, the overall principle of connecting people to an experience that is joyful and awe-inspiring and open and kind of takes your breath away will be one of the leading like North Stars of the decisions that we make when it comes there.
Anybody else want to comment on this?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in because this was really rough for us actually, because we started out as a completely different brand. We were Rave Runner when we first started, and it was all about EDM music, specifically the type of progressive house music that inspired the game. And we actually went into arcades first and used that as sort of a testing ground. We found that name was a filter. It was maybe good, maybe bad, but it just filtered. And we didn't want to limit ourselves from, future genres of music. So we went through rebranding, and never ever want to do that again. That's awful. But we became Audio Trip, and it allowed us to branch out into these different genres. But even as we do that, we still very much keep our same brand. So any environment, any even dance style that you experience in the game, we still want you to know that is Audio Trip. But it allows like this vast world of music, which of course it spans all genres. It's super subjective to whatever anybody would want to hear. So, we're able to do what we recently did as a Get Funky pack, like disco music. Who would have thought in the beginning 3 years ago when we started this that Rave Runner, not Audio Trip, would be having disco music, but it works because it still feels Audio Trip. And
yeah, but even in the visual design of the environments, which we actually have like these, we call them disco walls, and you have the disco floors that have the little light up tiles. We did the same thing, but they're walls on either side. And but even in doing that, we tried very hard to make sure that we stayed true to kind of this overall aesthetic that still felt like Audio Trip. So yeah, it's something that you you're always wanting to bring something new to the table, but at the same time, keep it consistent, so that it feels like what your players expect when they play the game.
Yeah, I think you just have to stay true to like a cohesive design, like set of principles throughout the development of your game, but then allow that freedom of expression from players who want to create their own environments and their own choreography. It still feels like your brand and your game, but it's allowed to evolve.
I think like retaining.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to jump in on. It's like retaining surprise and delight without taking it so far that it's like shocking and confusing and disconnects you from what's happening.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really great book. I'll put it in the comments when I can remember the name of it, that talks about what becomes wildly successful. And the formula has to do with the fact that people want something that refreshes, changes, excites, or titillates them, but not enough so that it's weird to them, right? It has to be like 15% different than what they're familiar with, and 85% very familiar. You want to be in your comfort zone, but just change the sort of the front of the thing. And there's like tons of science about this, apparently. So yeah, like when I come into a rhythm game, I think that one of the reasons a Pistol Whip was also successful was because it was like 80% the same thing I know. It's sort of like a rail shooter, but it's to disco, There was another indie game called the one about the Necro Dancer, where you're just kind of doing like a little side-scrolling thing, but you're doing it to the beat. You're basically doing a dungeon crawl to the beat. My point in putting this panel together, besides asking all of you these important questions, was to say there's another world beyond the big core IPs that's deeply worth exploring and discovering. And something about rhythm games in VR is fundamental. It's like, at first you could say, oh God, not another rhythm game in VR. But on the other hand, you could say VR is kind of rhythm games in a way. In game design, there's this notion of thematic titles, like thematic board games. It's like you're conquering Europe, or you're doing some space ship mutiny. But then there are abstract games, and abstract games actually for game designers are considered this sort of holy grail, because it's distilling it down to the essential element of what a game actually is about. And a rhythm game sort of takes VR down to its most essential element, which is timing, rhythm, connectivity, focus, engagement, full body spatialization, audio spatialization, multiplayer, like all of these things are factoring here. And if you get it right here first, then you could essentially extrapolate it out. But to me, that's why this is an incredibly important thing to study. And each one of these has something to teach you that you haven't seen somewhere else, or they wouldn't have survived this long. And I would also point out that every one of these paths that these companies have taken were not a straight path. It's sort of started one way and then went another way, and it turned into something else, and then they brought in a cat. I mean, who brings in a cat? So that's a thing. But I'm going to throw one last one to Johnny, and then I'm going to ask two quick audience questions. Johnny, tell me about how Supernatural was ideated, because I know more or less how the other ones came to be, but what did Supernatural just drop down from the sky, or did it start off as something else, or how did it come together?
Supernatural was more or less the culmination of years and years of experimentation at Within, and even prior to that, years of experimentation between our founders, Chris and Aaron, who started working together many years prior on a lot of incredible experimental story-based experiences, from WebGL projects leading into immersive installations. Finally, as Oculus started prototyping the Rift and virtual reality was turning the corner to becoming the next big thing, they decided to start Within. And the beginnings of the company were mostly focused on 360 video distribution. We were curating collections of the best 360 video content from around the world for distribution on our app. And we would watch people come out of the headsets feeling these incredible, electrifying emotional connections to the people that they would hear stories from. For example, when we would do documentaries about Syrian refugees, you would be eye to eye with a refugee telling you their story. And that in and of itself felt so much more personal and electrifying than hearing that story from somebody through a television screen. There was no real business case for the future of 360 video distribution at the time. And so we continued experimentation. That led us to interactive multiplayer when we were going around with these projects like Life of Us to film festivals around the world where people would come out of installations sweating, laughing, having no sense of how much time had passed, having no sense of how much energy they exerted. These like awesome physical experiences. And for many of them, it was their first time in virtual reality. And so that was the next signal we picked up on. At the same time, the VR rhythm game market started to explode. And we've always been driven by music. Chris's background in particular as a music video director, that's what his entire life and career has been around. And we started to think to ourselves, all right, we've been focusing on storytelling this entire time. But if we take these ingredients of sharing a virtual space with another human being in these expansive, beautiful destinations that give you feelings of awe and escape, moving your body to music and triggering a flow state, we might actually have an incredible fitness use case on our hands that's driven by all the storytelling prowess that we've been developing rather than an entertainment solution. So when that realization happened was about 3 years ago, and we spent 2 years working on and prototyping Supernatural in stealth mode until it was finally ready for release, which coincidentally landed about a month into lockdown and the beginnings of the pandemic.
Thank you for sharing all of that information. I think it reminds me again of, the previous talk we had with Charles Babb about how everything you do in your life, every part of your journey will ultimately inform something that you need at that clutch moment later on. And everything you've all ever done is now informing the decisions that you're making. And this is, of course, the takeaway that I want people who are watching this to have, is that nothing that you ever do is useless. You don't have to do anything right or wrong. It's always going to serve you in some way when you least expect it. So I'm going to ask one or two quick, tiny questions. Just give me short answers here. You can always answer more in the Discord, but for the sake of the recording, let me just see here. This one from Jennifer. If someone is a talent, what's the best way to reach you, to connect with you? Do you still look for music to add to your roster? I know a great dancer looking to expand into the VR, a line dancer looking to, so what about third-party licensing or independence or whatever? Do they have a chance of ever being a song in your platform?
Answer for myself also.
Yeah.
Please join our Discord. We're always open to new labels, to new promotions, to new music. Everybody's absolutely welcome. And we're always on Discord. So we have multiple ways to collaborate depending on what you're looking for. If you just want promotion, or if you want to, get the core team and just working hard with us on these music deals. So please, just join our Discord and message me.
No, we're happy to receive any and all submissions. Just go to synthwritersvr.com. We have a space in our contact form, and people are reaching out, and we are definitely talking and trying to do our best to like for us, the ethos is combining the independent world with the big stuff, and to just make good music and good collaborations happen, regardless of commercial status.
It's very much the same for us as well. We actually have two songs in our OST so far that are from people who are playing our games.
Yeah, some of our players who submitted music. So
yeah, and there are more on the way.
And for us on the music front, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll connect you with the right team. And on the dancer front, on our careers page, getsupernatural.com/careers. Anytime we're looking for additional mapping resources or choreographers, we post a JD there. So that's the best way to get to the right folks if there's a job opening.
If somebody out there wants to make their own rhythm game, are you rolling your own engines, or are you working in Unity, Unreal? How do you do it?
For Boombox, we work on Unity, 3D.
Yeah, Unity.
Yes.
Okay.
Unity
what about Audio Trip? You guys are Unity? All right. Mm-hmm. Arturo?
Team Unity, baby.
Huh. Johnny?
Unity.
Oh wow! So there's a thing there. All right.
Bit of a
We are united. Yeah.
I'm going to see who's going to make the Unreal game version of a rhythm game. But I think there's probably reasons for this. We will answer those in the Discord. All of you, thank you from the bottom of my heart for playing along, for patience, for making these games that inspire us so much and get us moving on our feet. It's an incredibly complex, difficult thing to pull off. So honestly, my kudos to you. This is the Academy Awards of my thanks to you. And have a great day. Thank you for being a part of VRTO. And everybody go out and check out these games for real. Seriously, you'll be enriched by it.
Thanks for having us. Such great company.
It was amazing.
Thanks
for having
everyone.
us.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Good night.